Hello, good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 29th of December. I'm Catherine Holloway and you're watching TVam. The news headlines this morning: Britain's biggest building society, the Halifax, says the recovery in the housing market is likely to begin in the spring, although prices will not start rising until the second half of the year. A policewoman who was stabbed in the heart as she tried to tackle a suspected burglar in Liverpool remains critically ill in hospital this morning. And the UN Secretary-General is recommending a further 10,000 peacekeeping troops be sent to Bosnia. In the programme this morning, tips on how to overcome that tummy ache after the excesses of Christmas. And Jeff Clark's going to be here with all the sports news. And the paper's going to be reviewed by John Stalker and Anne Leslie of the Daily Mail. But right now, we go over to Sky for the latest news with Lisa Aziz.
Housing market set to begin recovery in the spring. Stabbed policewoman fights for her life. UN plans 10,000 more troops for Bosnia. And an open Europe only days away. Good morning, the news from Sky for TVam on Tuesday the 29th of December. Britain's biggest building society says the long-awaited recovery in the housing market is likely to begin in the spring. The Halifax says it expects the number of sales to increase by 15% in 1993, although prices will not start rising until the second half of the year. Meanwhile, the Chancellor Norman Lamont has attacked people he says are too quick to run Britain down.
The good news: life's returning to the housing market. The bad news: it won't feel better for another 6 months, and it won't be a quick recovery. That's according to the Halifax Building Society's annual review. It predicts house prices will start to rise in the second half of the year and expects sales in 1993 to increase by 15%. It's a long-awaited recovery. There's been little demand over the last 4 years, and that's pushed the price of the average home to a 10-year low. With lower interest rates and better deals on mortgages, the Halifax believes buyers will be tempted back into the market. But the Society says more is needed to rebuild confidence. It backs schemes to help first-time buyers and low-income homeowners. And there's some comfort for the Chancellor. The Halifax reckons economic recovery could be stronger than the government expects. It predicts growth of 1.5% for 1993. Norman Lamont's been quick to respond to the tentative optimism. He's attacked the cautious as being too quick to run Britain down, claiming arguments about the British economy abound with self-denigrating myths. If real signs of recovery are coming from the high street and the housing market, the new year could herald the end of the longest recession since the Second World War. Sophie McGarrigle, Sky News.
Consumer confidence seems to have returned to the high street, with stores and travel firms reporting a post-Christmas rush in sales. Tills up and down the country were ringing as bargain hunters flocked to the shops.
On the high street, business was booming as shopkeepers hailed the best start to the winter sales for years. 500 people queued outside Selfridges in Oxford Street for their doors to open, attracted by the many bargains on offer. The news is a much-needed boost for an area hard hit by IRA terrorist attacks, which scared off many shoppers in the run-up to Christmas. And the consumer spending spree was not exclusive to the capital. Stores around the country reported similar brisk trade, with shoppers concentrating on items for the home. Bargain hunters were also out in force at the travel agents, where big discounts fueled a post-Christmas booking rush.
I think it's the beginning of people spending money. I think the problem hasn't really been a shortage of cash in the last few months. The changes in interest rates have put money back into people's bank accounts. The trouble has been in persuading people to take that money out and start spending it. And we're seeing the beginning of that now, I think, with some real bargains out there for people.
Pickford say business is up 50% on this time last year. The boom is being put down to an increase in consumer confidence brought on by lower interest rates. That means more disposable income for many people, which they've decided to spend on a holiday in the sun. Rob Gillis, Sky News.
A policewoman who was stabbed in the heart as she tried to tackle a suspected burglar remains critically ill in hospital this morning. It was the 4th time in 5 years that Leslie Harrison had been attacked while on duty on Merseyside.
Still in intensive care this morning, these are crucial hours for Leslie Harrison. With her family and boyfriend at her bedside, the WPC is very seriously ill. Overnight, her condition didn't change. Leslie, who's 29, was stabbed in the heart and arm after chasing a suspect through the streets of Liverpool's Wavertree district on Sunday night. She and 3 police colleagues had answered a 999 call about a man acting suspiciously. It was the 4th time Leslie had been attacked in 5 years with the Merseyside force.
Leslie, in fact, was seriously assaulted in December of 1991, facing those dangers, but was not deterred from bravely facing them again. And we're proud of her for that.
Her family said Leslie accepted the risks that went with the job.
She loves the job. She loves working with the people she's working with. She was being paid to do her job, and that's the way she looks at it. It's just another job for her.
Police are continuing their search for witnesses, and a 28-year-old Liverpool man is in custody. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Police hunting the killer of teenager Joanna Young are today expected to mount a full search of the area where her body was found. 14-year-old Joanna disappeared from her home at Watton in Norfolk last Wednesday. Her body was discovered dumped in a water-filled pit on Boxing Day. Joanna's father says he believes his daughter may have known her killer.
Detectives hunting the killer of 14-year-old Joanna Young have been inundated with calls from the public since her body was found on Boxing Day. Police are interviewing dozens of people living in the area, trying to build up a picture of Joanna's last movements.
We are still anxious to trace people who can account for the movements of Joanna between the time that she left home at 7:30 on Wednesday and the time that we found her body at 8:20 on Boxing Day.
Joanna's parents say she was a sensible girl and wouldn't have gone off with a stranger. They believe her killer was someone known to her.
Unless they were friends, she would obviously go with those, but any strangers, I'm certain she wouldn't go with them. You know, as I say, you hear so much of this sort of thing happening, and as parents we get worried. So we obviously try to drum all this business about going off with strangers.
Police are still searching the site where Joanna's body was discovered by tracker dogs. She was half naked and had been dumped in a pit filled with water just a mile away from her home. Over the next few days, the first clues from forensic tests are expected as laboratories reopen after the Christmas break. Sophie Decker, Sky News, Durham.
A further 10,000 peacekeeping troops could be sent to Bosnia. The United Nations Secretary-General, Dr. Boutros Ghali, says the soldiers are needed to bolster the UN presence in the area. It comes as President Bush warns that America may use military intervention in Bosnia. Tim Needham reports.
Dr. Boutros Ghali, here in Geneva meeting the Bosnian President Alija Izetbegovic, is proposing to move another 10,000 troops into Bosnia to try to seal off the Republic from any more aircraft and weapons. In his report to the Security Council, Dr. Boutros Ghali says the extra forces are needed if the UN is to make sure its peacekeeping efforts remain credible. But as the UN looks towards peacekeeping, President Bush appears to be losing patience. He's threatening American military intervention against Serbian forces in 3 possible scenarios. Firstly, to enforce the current no-fly zone over Bosnia. Secondly, if UN troops on the ground are attacked. And thirdly, if fighting spills over into the neighbouring enclave of Kosovo. If that happens, the Americans fear a conflict which could drag other Balkan nations, as well as Turkey and Greece, into the war. The Serbs aren't taking Mr. Bush's threat lightly. Already forces from Serbia and Montenegro are preparing for US action, as well as the threat from the Muslim-dominated Bosnian army. They're reportedly planning a major assault to retake the capital, Sarajevo, though with winter taking a severe hold, the UN fears many more people could die from cold than anything war can throw at them. Tim Needham, Sky News.
Israel has admitted that 10 of the 415 Palestinians it deported 2 weeks ago were wrongly expelled. All the men are still stranded in southern Lebanon, with both the Israeli and Lebanese governments denying them humanitarian aid. The UN envoy James Jonah is in Beirut to try to persuade the Lebanese government to allow him to see the deportees. The European Community's single market comes of age in the next few days, with the prospect of EC citizens being able to shop, travel and settle anywhere in the community. Cross-border shopping is expected to increase considerably, but as Sky News found out, a few teething problems are also expected.
Coachloads of Britons already cross the channel to buy the cheaper cigarettes and beer. Come the new year, they can bring back all they want, so long as it's for personal use and not going to be resold. French shops expect business to soar, but British coach companies say the amount people can bring back is way over their legal weight limit, and responsible companies won't cross that threshold.
If we are over the prescribed limit, then we can be liable to prosecution, and if we are prosecuted, then we may find that we put our operator's licence at risk.
They're going to be assuming that they can vastly increase their duty-free goods, but we just simply cannot carry them because of the restrictions imposed upon us by the Ministry of Transport.
Breweries in Kent expect to be badly hit. Travellers can buy the same beer in France for a quarter of the price because of lower taxes. Shepherd Neame plans to export a specially brewed ale in the hope Brits will buy it in France.
Completely ironic that we should be producing beer in this country, exporting it, for our beer drinkers to bring it back into the country again. But that is the ridiculous part of the tax laws that exist at present.
Even with the current trade restrictions, it's estimated British travellers spend £350 million on alcohol abroad each year. That total's expected to soar next year, and the implications on the public purse are significant. The Treasury believes it could lose up to £250 million each year in lost taxes as people flock abroad for the bargains. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
And the main news again, Britain's biggest building society, the Halifax, says the recovery in the housing market is likely to begin in the spring, although prices won't start rising until the second half of the year. That's news from Sky so far this morning. It's now coming up to 12 minutes past 6. Back to Catherine.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Nikki Fox is with us with the weather news. Morning, Nikki.
Hello, Catherine.
Now, I understand you had your share of seasonal disasters in the Fox household?
Yes, well, narrowly averted. At about 12:30, my mother went to the oven to check the turkey, see how he was doing. Our £16 turkey, only to find he'd barely started cooking, and we were all ravenous, so we had to sort of hack him to pieces in a rather cannibalistic way and then cook the smaller pieces. So, yeah, we got our lunch in time. But
my father deprived us of one of the major aspects of Christmas by smashing the pudding bowl.
And with the pudding?
With the pudding in it and covering it in thousands of shards of broken glass. My mother reacted particularly calmly, as I'm sure you can imagine. Can I ask you about something? With your travel editor's hat on, after the news, lots of people going away, obviously, over New Year, and here we have a little bit of a warning. We're all going on a summer oily day in the Daily Star. This is an extraordinary story. A couple who went off to holiday in Crete and found this oil works, with all this being gushing out into the sea on their holiday beach.
And it was supposed to be a European blue flag beach, which means it's especially clean and well facilitated. But that really does look like a bit of a disaster. But there's mention in there of a series of gazetteers. Most travel agents do have some very, very thorough reference books, including a new one that has a very in-depth independent report on every hotel and every resort just about that you're likely to book.
And it's true warts and all stuff, isn't it?
Real warts and all. So if you have any doubts, ask to take a look at that.
That's right. It costs £190, so it's not worth buying yourself.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Ask your agent.
More than the cost of a holiday with some of the bargains there are around at the moment. Anyway, on to the weather. It'll be a cold and frosty morning across much of the country today, with some sunshine for most places. However, in the far northwest of Scotland, it'll remain fairly cloudy. There'll also be some patches of freezing fog around, especially in central and northern England and in parts of Scotland. These may well persist for much of the morning, and where the fog does persist, temperatures are unlikely to rise above freezing. This afternoon, there may still be a few foggy patches around, particularly on the English-Scottish borders. Northwestern Scotland and Ireland will be cloudier this afternoon, but they should remain dry, and elsewhere it'll be a dry and a sunny afternoon on the whole. Winds will be light, moderate though in the far northwest, and temperatures will range from about 3 to 6 Celsius, that's 37 to 43 Fahrenheit. And tonight much of the country will be dry, clear and frosty, with patches of freezing fog, especially in the Midlands and central and southern England. It'll drop to about -5 Celsius, which is 23 Fahrenheit, very cold indeed, but in the cloudier northwest and Northern Ireland it'll stay a little milder. Now the outlook across the next couple of days and into the new year. Wednesday will be dry and cold with some sunshine, but windy and wet in the north and the west. And Thursday will be largely dull and unsettled, but it'll be mainly dry in the south. And Friday and Saturday, that's New Year's Day and the 2nd, Frost and overnight fog are expected, and then unsettled weather in the north and west, and it'll be dry and cloudy in the south. Now for our weather summary with the maps. This morning it'll be cold and frosty with some sunshine for all areas, but with freezing fog patches lingering, especially in the border country and the Scottish lowlands. Northwestern Scotland will be cloudier than elsewhere. And this afternoon some fog will persist, meaning sub-zero temperatures, and Ireland will become cloudy as well as Western Scotland. Elsewhere though, it'll be dry, sunny and cold between 3 to 6 Celsius, which is 37 to 43 Fahrenheit, and with light winds mostly and fresher ones in the far northwest. And finally, tonight will be dry, clear and frosty, with freezing fog most likely to reform in central southern England. Temperatures will drop to as low as -5, which is 23 Fahrenheit, but will stay above zero in the cloudier northwest. And the outlook is cold, bright and frosty, becoming more unsettled into the new year.
Thanks very much indeed, Nikki. Hear more from you later on. Now next, we're going to be reviewing the papers in the company of Anne Leslie of the Daily Mail and former police chief John Stalker, so stay with us while we take a break.
The ancestral trail.
When he who is the chosen one shall tread upon the ancient path and battle there to overcome
The forces of the dark. The ancestral trail, an epic story of myths, magic and monsters. In each part, follow the trail to strange new lands and meet terrifying beasts. Use your monster cards and ancient map to solve the ultimate quest, victory over the forces of the dark. The ancestral trail.
There's going to be a New Year's Eve celebration on TVam, and we want you to look in as we look back. Clive James, Rory Bremner, Kim Wilde and Boy George will be amongst our studio guests as we review some of the highlights from the best years of TVam. All your favourite presenters, plus some old friends, will be getting together as we say farewell to 92. So make sure you join us along with the stars for the Good Morning Britain special, New Year's Eve on TVam.
Hello again, welcome back. The main news this morning, Britain's biggest building society, the Halifax, says the recovery in the housing market is likely to begin in the spring, although prices will not start rising until the second half of the year. And a policewoman who was stabbed in the heart as she tried to tackle a suspected burglar in Liverpool remains critically ill in hospital this morning. And the UN Secretary-General is recommending a further 10,000 peacekeeping troops should be sent to Bosnia. Right now it's 6:17, you're watching TVam. Now before we join our paper reviewers of the day, who are former police chief John Stalker and Anne Leslie of the Daily Mail, let's take a look through the front pages of the newspapers this morning. The Daily Telegraph here, starting with that story on house sales, saying that they'll recover in the spring. This, of course, a forecast from the Halifax Building Society, and also leading on the atrocious story of the policewoman who's been stabbed in the heart with a screwdriver as she made a call to a suspected burglary in Liverpool, and apparently it's the fourth time in the course of her career that she has been attacked. Financial Times here, well, saying the most hectic start to the winter sales season for years. Are we about to spend our way out of recession? Is this the beginning of the green shoot of recovery, we wonder? It says that more than 150,000 shoppers turned up at the Meadowhall shopping centre near Sheffield, and a similar number, including me, thronged to the Metro Centre in Gateshead, and there was a 6-mile queue in both directions on the M1 near Sheffield, if you're wondering why that was when you were held up coming home yesterday, and a 5-mile tailback on the northbound A1 at Gateshead. Don't we know it? The Independent here, well, a lovely picture, a little girl looking through the bank holiday crowds in Oxford Street in the West End of London yesterday, obviously surrounded by sale bags here. The story in Bosnia, the Serbs are fleeing the Muslims' vengeance. Apparently now the Muslim population are burning parts of villages on the border of Serbia. The Guardian, George Bush threatens to strike at Serbia, a tough message, it says, emphasising the determination of Washington in the dying days of the Bush administration. And here again in the Times, Bush threatens to send his forces into Serbia. Picture of Prince Charles, away from it all, the happy hunter. Now, how did they get those pictures, do you wonder? Well, we'll return to a story in the Daily Mail in a second, which suggests that the royal family are cooperating, actually setting up photo shoots for a change, are cooperating with a film crew looking at the invasion of the tabloids, the so-called invasion of the tabloids into their privacy. And here we are with the tabloids, the Daily Mirror, leading again on that story. This policewoman has been hurt 4 times doing her duty. Last night, she was fighting for her life, stabbed through the heart. The Daily Express, well, that story again. Sales fever hits Britain, traffic chaos in hunt for bargains, and it says that £1.5 billion may have crossed the counters yesterday. I wonder whether you were out shopping for bargains. The Daily Star here. Different story, different royal story. Fergie's Flying Circus. She's off with a party of 11 at the cost of £35,000. I don't know why this should be a cause for comment, really. She's paying for it herself. The Daily Mail here, beyond the call of duty again. The policewoman Leslie Harrison, a picture of her here with her brother-in-law fighting for her life this morning. And The Sun again, police beauty who took on the beast is the Sun's headline. Let's join our reviewers of the day, Anne, Leslie and John Stalker. Good morning to both of you. John, can I ask you first of all about your reactions to this? It does seem incredible that this policewoman has been attacked 4 times in the course of her career and now stabbed through the heart.
Not as incredible as you may think. She works in Liverpool, of course, which is a tough place, but so are many other cities. But she's one of the crew of a fast response vehicle. Now, they're the people who get there first. She's obviously a good driver. She's obviously a keen, fit police officer, and she's in there exactly the same as if she was a man.
But Mary Kenny in the Daily Mail is saying that in her piece that she really does think that this equality business in the police force is going too far, that perhaps somebody like Leslie Harrison should not be in the fast response team, because women, like it or not, are weaker physically, they're smaller, and perhaps this is where the whole business of gender blindness in the police is actually dangerous. Now, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think probably, so far as I'm concerned, you're preaching to the converted. I think that, and always have, but it's not been fashionable to think that. In fact, it's been almost illegal to think that for the last few years, and police women themselves have been very anxious and almost desperate to be accepted as equals in every way.
Because otherwise you don't get the promotions and things unless you've been through it all. It's very difficult.
Yeah, these days, now with computers and so on, they actually don't differentiate. It will say PC, the W, women PC, has now been dropped. But PC Smith, the computer doesn't know whether it's a man or a woman, and these things are allocated almost on a random basis.
But the thing that surprised me is apparently her partner in the car was also a woman. So, I mean, I wonder whether it wouldn't be sensible. I mean, goodness me, I wouldn't like anybody not to be allowed, but simply because they're a woman, to do a job. But I think a little bit of common sense, a man and a woman in that car.
I wouldn't disagree. I think that probably they will look at it again, but the endeavour has been for equality at all costs, and not just in the police force, but because it was a government organisation, because the Home Office are responsible for both areas, both police and equal opportunities, the police have had to be seen to be more equal possibly than others. I mean, the Fire Brigade, for example, have resisted it quite successfully now, and legally, but very cleverly, whereas the police have just really said equality, that's it. That's what the women want, that's what they can have, equal pay, equal hours, equal everything. But that, of course, is a result of it. Having said that, it would probably have been a man who was stabbed equally. I think one of the papers makes a good point this morning. The Police Federation have said, but women are not equal. In fact, they're less capable of defending themselves because they actually don't have the equipment. They don't have truncheons and so on,
they're given.
which women can't carry, which men can. So they're probably less equal to the disadvantage. Now.
Is there also a changing perception of attacks on policemen and women? It used to be the case that it was seen as an even more serious crime than an assault on the general public. Are police now seen as Aunt Sally's, as fair game for attack?
Oh yeah, I think all policemen are. They expect it, all police officers are. But the days when even the worst of criminals had some chivalry towards women and old people are long, long gone. If it's a silver button and a blue uniform, and they don't really.
But I think they're probably rather grateful that they're faced with a woman police officer, because they think, oh well, she's a pushover because she's not as strong as me.
Some policemen these days are buying for themselves these sort of mesh vests that stop knives going in. They're not official issue, but they can be bought. A lot of policemen working night duty wear those at their own expense, but they're not made for women.
That seems extraordinary, doesn't it, that we have policemen and women in Britain having to kit themselves up.
Yeah, well also they're not made for women. I suppose it's like, seat belts and cars are not designed for women with bosoms, Can
I ask you about a happier story here? These are pictures of the first day of the sale, the bank holiday rush at the Lakeside shopping centre in Essex yesterday. Anne, were you out? Were you shopping?
Certainly I wasn't, partly because a thief had tampered with my car the day before. But it's amazing. I mean, in the Mirror, I think it is, there's a story of this family, Marina Vickers and her 4 children, sat outside for 4 days, a particular store in Portsmouth, 4 nights. They had their Christmas turkey and plum pudding on a folding table outside the shop. Marina, aged 58, said, "It beat being stuck in front of the telly." I mean, don't people find their pleasures in strange ways?
What a fabulous
I don't know that because there's been an enormous rush to the sales that it necessarily means that the recession is coming to an end.
We were discussing this before. It's compensated to some extent for the lack of sales before Christmas, but I think probably indicates that the limited amount of money people are spending it on probably more sensible things in the sales rather than frivolous things that will be broke by Boxing Day.
Well, you'd like to know, of course, what the royals were doing. They were killing birds, it seems, you know, feathered types. According to The Sun, they bagged 10,000 pheasants. But they've also been cooperating, as you pointed out, with the BBC on a programme about press intrusion, with a press officer driving the BBC around and pointing to what he calls the dipsticks. This is a new royal insult.
Yeah, it's from Only Fools and Horses. He's been watching David Jason.
I see, yes, shouting that. I think it's a little bizarre, really, that the royals are sort of cooperating with one branch of the media to slag off another branch of the media. And I also feel it's a little bit insensitive of them at this particular time to be rather brazenly at this shoot where, you know, all the feathered friends round Sandringham are all sort of falling to the ground in cloud of feathers.
And dressed in this ridiculous way, it's not surprising that people don't identify with the royal family.
Particularly when there's sort of pompous statements from the palace as well, because of the point you made. When journalists obviously rang up the palace press spokesman, dragged him away from his Christmas holiday, from his turkey and so on, and asked why the royal family were cooperating this way, even standing posing for photographs so that the BBC could get shots of the bank of cameras at Sandringham. The spokesman said, "It is a matter for our judgment. I don't think it's for us to explain our action in relation to another section of the media." Very high-handed.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a magnificent ability to put their feet in it all the time.
Jeff Boycott's School of Public Relations
absolutely,
again.
Absolutely.
Did you like this story here in the Daily Mail and several other tabloids? "Hello, that's my car you've stolen." "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll let you have it back then." Extraordinary story. I wonder if your car thief who broke in over Christmas, Anne, was as thoughtful. It's this lady, Janet Smith, wasn't she, who she lost her new company car complete with mobile phone as she was actually helping somebody to get to hospital who was pregnant. Having seen the car had gone, she rang the car phone and the thief actually answered the car phone and she said, "Look, you know, explain the situation." Spent 20 minutes on the phone to him, persuading him to leave the car behind at an agreed spot with the keys tucked under the mat. And he even wished her a happy Christmas.
That's the way, yeah. If you can't beat them, join them.
I was just thinking of all those photographs in the papers of these enormous traffic jams and also of all the shopping malls, car parks, absolutely stuff. I just hope a particular religious cult doesn't come from the Philippines over here, because this particular religious cult, according to the Independent, says that God has told them to deflate the tires of buses, cars and all other vehicles during evening rush hours. And they've been running battles with the police because they say the air belongs to God and should not be imprisoned in tires. Can you imagine if the Brent Cross parking lot at the end of the day and everybody comes out and finds that, you know, God has told this bunch to let us be.
Not a bad defence. One that tickled me this morning was the Shirley Valentine, of course, which was the best watched television programme apparently over Christmas. Again, always following the showing of it, the holiday applications for Greece go up.
It's all a plot. It's all a plot.
Yeah, by the Greek Tourist Board. Yeah, we've decided, but this happened again. The switchboards at the Greek holiday places have been jammed by housewives who want...
Imagine the Queen was watching. It's her favourite film, isn't it?
Is it?
Yes. Apparently it's her favourite film. I think she thinks it keeps her in touch with her subjects.
Oh, she already got herself a Mediterranean Romeo, hasn't she? Of course, a Greek.
Oh my goodness! Or has she? He's called Stavros, or Phil the Greek, isn't he?
Thank you both very much indeed. Hear from you later. It's 6:29. You're watching TVam, and Nick is here with the weather.
Thanks, Catherine. Good morning. It's a cold, frosty one today, and there will be some sunshine for most areas, except perhaps this morning northwestern Scotland, which will be dry but it should be dry up there. And also, of course, the sunshine will be less evident in places where there's still freezing fog around. There'll be quite a lot around this morning in patches, particularly in the lowlands of Scotland and into the border countries, northern England as well. This afternoon, much of that fog will still persist, but it'll lift gradually. Where it does persist, of course, temperatures will stay below freezing. Ireland and western Scotland will be slightly cloudy but dry, and elsewhere should be nice, bright and crisp, with temperatures up to around 5 or 6 Celsius. That's 43 Fahrenheit tops. The winds will be light, a little more fresh in northwestern Scotland, and tonight's another cold, frosty night, very cold indeed, with some more frost and freezing fog by the morning. Catherine.
Thanks very much, Nikki. Now, in the next half hour, how to tackle that discomfort after all the seasonal overeating.